Okay, hello, my name is Willis. I'll be sharing today my S264 Ca1 RJ sharing. This will be conducted on lesson 3. And yeah, the assignment was to record a RJ video sharing each key learning point from each lesson of the CA so far lah. So that will consist of 3 lessons. In the first lesson, the key thing that I learned and I want to share about would be the game classifications. So in this classifications, there are 4: invasion, net barrier, striking and fielding, and target games. So each has its own property. I'll be sharing some of the simpler ones like pace and scoring to showcase my understanding. So for invasion games, they tend to be a faster paced game compared to the rest. Yeah, because the player needs to adapt and move according to the position or how the coaches plan to set up their game plan in terms of where the object is. So in the case of soccer, which is an invasion game, it's fast-paced as players need to adapt to their positions. They need to change their positions depending on where on the pitch the ball will be. Yeah. So secondly will be net barrier games. The net barrier games are just sports where the object will cross over a net, so there will be a center parting to differentiate both sides. Yeah, so this is also a fast-paced game as you have to react quickly to how your opponent sets up the play lah. Yeah, striking and fielding will be a moderate-paced game because there are short bursts of energy, especially like for example during the batting phase in baseball. The batting phase would be a fast pace, whereas the resting phase while waiting for the next batter to run up would be a longer waiting time. So therefore I put it as moderate pace. And lastly, for target games, it is considered to be a slow paced game because it takes time to aim at the target, and yeah, the person might take a longer time lah. Yeah, so how coaches can apply it into their coaching session or whatever they plan for the lesson would be that you can choose the classification of sport depending on the ability of your student or according to what they can do or what you think is more suitable for them. For example, younger children or even elderlies who have slower reaction time or require more time on the ball so that they can concentrate and aim better, probably you can suggest target games for them as an introduction to sports, because it is a simpler technique as they can take as much time as they want and they don't have to react as fast. Yeah, so that's what I think I can share for lesson 1. As for lesson 2, the key learning point that I had was especially the Q&A session. Yeah, so in the Q&A session, in the TGFU framework originally, there is the Singapore adapted version would be GCA, which is the games concept approach. Yeah, games concept approach, where you start off the lesson with a game 1, before proceeding to a Q&A session to inquire the students, to guide them towards a deeper understanding lah. Yeah, and for after that would be a practice task where the students will practice their what they have identified in the Q&A session, and then lastly they apply it in the game 2. Yeah, so in the Q&A session, this is what I learned in the lesson 2. Yeah, the focus is for the coach to guide the students to discover their own learning rather than the classical, the usual method where coaches just instruct students. The Q&A session in this TGFU or games concept approach framework is that the coach will use leading questions to guide or lead the students to discover or answer questions to answer or to solve a specific game scenario or game problem lah. So in this case, this will provide the students with higher cognitive engagement as they have to think of answers on the spot. They can use their past experiences or even the experience they had in the game 1, where they can share and like learn what they can apply lah, or what was some errors or faults that they could improve on to improve further in doing a drill or something like that. Yeah, so some negative sides of this would be that it's slightly more time consuming as students require times to consolidate their thoughts, as well as coaches require more time to ask the questions. Another limit to this approach would be that because you're asking questions, the questions that you ask have to be phrased in a way where you use the students' understanding to continue to question them. So for example, if a student does not give you the answer that you prefer, or the ideal answer that you have in mind, perhaps you have to come up with more questions on the spot to continue to lead and guide them towards the correct answer that you desire lah. Yeah, so this is some limitations that you can have during the Q&A session. Yeah. Lastly, for lesson 3, I think the main focus for me was the freeze replay, as during the coaching session itself, the freeze replay should be conducted with a questionnaire similar to the Q&A session. Yeah, however, during my coaching session, at my half of the court, I totally forgot about this, and yeah, my freeze replay was more of instructing or just telling the students what was well or what could be improved. Yeah, so perhaps what I learned from this was that in the freeze replay, the coach must remember and continue to ask leading questions to engage their cognitive aspect lah. Yeah, so usually freeze replay will be done in game 2 for students participating in the game itself, and you can like freeze the game itself to engage the students' thinking and ask them to pick out some good or bad things that happen in that moment of the game. Yeah. But one limitation for this would be that because freeze replay requires you to stop the game, so perhaps in the middle of scoring, you stop the game, and yeah, so this will require extra time and also will disrupt the game flow lah. So therefore, to ensure that you give sufficient game time, you must use freeze replay in moderation, and preferably use it not too much so that you don't restrict the game time of the students lah. Yeah. So that is all that I have for lessons 1 to 3. This will be CA1, RJ1. Thank you.